What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Tjink Tank. I just want to say happy Juneteenth. Happy Juneteenth. A day that we commemorate as African Americans, as Africans who were enslaved by the barbarians and brought over here to the New World and toiled and worked and fought and suffered and survived, for centuries against this barbarian in a foreign land. And today commemorates the moment at which we physically, the last Africans who were enslaved, were notified that they were free. One thing I want you guys to remember is that despite the propaganda of both the liberal and conservative, the Democrats, the Republicans, the Dixiecrats, all of them, the ones who want to pretend like white people saved us and freed us from slavery, and the ones that wanted to keep us enslaved, right? Because conservative Republicans are the group of white people who would love to enslave us. These are the Confederates, right? They want to bring it back, and they're trying their best to do so, right? And if you think we're in 2024 and that could never happen again, I bet you at some point they was like, damn, it's 1500s. Who does that? Oh, they do, the barbarian. Right? Keep in mind, they're still as savage as always. Technology just has improved. Then you got the liberal side, the other white people who utilize their white supremacy in a different format, and they want to be the hero. They want to be the Superman and say that it was the white people who made a conscious decision to free the slaves because it was morally wrong and they was against it. Now, were there white people who were against slavery? Yes, there was, right? There were a lot of white people who were against slavery because a lot of them recognized that same slavery system within the European peninsula coastline of Asia that they come from. All right, but either way, neither one of these groups are the ones that actually liberated us from slavery. What liberated the African from slavery was the African. The threat of rebellion, because Africans rebelled. Africans rebelled. Africans, we didn't. I don't want you guys to think we just sat here and just took it. No, we didn't sit here and just take it. We fought. We killed. We ran. We participated in espionage, deception, war. We had militias. Our African brothers, our African men, and our African women were out in foreign lands fighting a barbarian on a land they knew nothing about. With all the dynamics of the Native Americans involved. The Native Americans also enslaved us on this land that we see here. And there was those Native Americans during this day, back when we were notified that we were free. The Native Americans didn't want to free us. The Native Americans tried to hold on to African slaves. The Native Americans, let me say it again, the Native Americans who enslaved us tried to hold on to their African slaves. And these Native Americans who had African slaves are the 5 civilized tribes who capitulated to whiteness. That's why you call them the 5 civilized tribes, because white people said they were civilized when they started acting white. And to act white, it means to hate black and to participate in white activities, which is enslaving black people for their economic benefit. Today is the end of the first form, the basic form, the default form of capitalism. Because the transatlantic slave trade is capitalism at its basic form, without any regulation. That's what it is, right? And today, as you see, capitalism has evolved to enslave everybody. And the best way to have a slave, the best slave you can have, is a slave that doesn't know he's a slave. And unfortunately, even though we were physically freed, a lot of us are still mentally chained. But the good thing is we are in the age of information. So a lot of people who are physically free but mentally enslaved are becoming unenslaved. They're freeing themselves. No longer do we need the white man to physically release us, or no longer do we need to physically attack or delete a white person in order to gain our freedom. All we have to do is fight the battle within our heads. We still have a few chains wrapped around our heads. We still worship white gods because we can't get rid of that Jesus. That Jesus has been beaten into our DNA by the barbarian. So we know nothing but Jesus. We can't get rid of Jesus. We can't, with the Arabs, who enslaved us first and taught the barbarian. The Arabs, which were the first mixed mulattoes that we helped create, and we see what happens when we create these mulattoes who capitulate to whiteness. Even though the white people hate Arabs, Arabs hate white people, but they collectively like to use Africans to do all the work that they're too lazy to do, or they don't have the intellectual capacity to do. Because keep in mind, we weren't just slaves for physical labor. We've also been slaves for our intellectual capability. Don't ever let anybody tell you otherwise. It was our African genius that they wanted to take. We were geniuses. They needed geniuses who knew how to work the land anywhere. We can go anywhere on the planet and work the land because we are geniuses by nature. Nature made us geniuses, right? And I know this day, you know, there's going to be a lot of black people who are self-haters, right? Who project their self-worth onto other people, because we have black people who are still suffering from PTSD of the propaganda of 500 years of European influence. Look all around the world. You got Asian people trying to be white. They embarrass themselves by not having pride in themselves and their identities, and they capitulate to whiteness. You have Africans on the continent that can't get rid of white Jesus, even though white Jesus has done nothing but destroy their society and their culture. You got East Africans that can't get rid of Muhammad, a guy an illiterate dude who's running around killing people. All these foreign religions have metastasized inside of the black man's head to the point where if you even question there is the practice of Islam and Christianity within the African context, those people vehemently get defended and they automatically shut you off, because that's how religion was created. I want you to understand that Africans, right, are what makes us special. And if you notice, everybody gravitates towards us. Everybody wants to be us. Everybody wants to use us. Everybody wants to be around us. Even when they say they don't want us around them, they literally come next to us to tell us they don't want us around them. It's the weirdest thing. You guys know what I mean. For some reason, they cannot live without us. They can't live without our contributions. They can't live without our cultural swag. They can't live because we are the breath of this planet. We are what you would consider religion incarnate. The African spiritual systems was the culture. The culture. And it's hard for people to grasp this concept, because this fictitious thing we call religion that's made up, we think that is the default. That is how we as black people are going to ascend to whatever next level we're trying to get to, how we're going to avoid hell and how we're going to get to heaven. We think we need that path. The door of Christianity, Islam is the path to enlightenment. We believe that because it was beaten into us. But what we don't understand, and what it's time for us to remember as Africans, we are gods on this planet ourselves. We are the progenitors. We are the creators. We are the creators. We understand that we are truly spirits having a human physical experience. Our culture teaches us that. We don't have religion. Africans never had religion. We had culture. It's who we are. Like when you read the Bible, right? When you read the Quran, these stories that are made up from other stories. The Bible, right? The King James Bible, which indoctrinates most of the world, is a carbon copy of various other Bibles that were written hundreds of years before it. Those other Bibles written hundreds of years before it are carbon copies of the Septuagint, which was written thousands of years before it. The Septuagint, which is a Greek Bible, which is a carbon copy of the Egyptian religions. I say religion so you can understand it, but the Egyptian culture itself, right, manifested into the European context, the Greeks, because the Africans taught the Greeks about culture. Every single Greek scholar, genius, and person of note was simply a European that was lucky enough to go to Africa and be taught by the African. So when you start to look into yourself and you start to look at Africa, you realize you don't need these carbon copies of carbon copies of carbon copies to find enlightenment. You yourself as an African, you're already enlightened. You just don't know it yet because your eyes are closed. You've never opened up and fully saw who you were. The characters, and I understand that the characters in the Bible, some people want to believe that they are African. In fact, they are. But African in a different way, not African in the Bible. That's all made up. It's inspired, based on a true story, not actually a true story, if you get what I mean. you know. And as much as the European and the Arab, which is the first mixed mulatto, who has absolutely nothing to do with Africans' accomplishments, because they don't have any cultural consistency when it comes to anything they like to claim when it comes to Africa within their Middle Eastern Orient area. They have nothing, right? So in the age of information, what's coming to light is that what we call Egyptian, because they like to accept Egypt, they like to separate Egypt from Africa. First, Egyptians were white. Then, okay, they weren't white, they were some sort of Arab white. Then they weren't white, Arab white, they were some sort of Atlantean. Then they weren't that, they was some sort of alien. So now Europeans have come to the conclusion that they're aliens, anything but African, because their mind, they can't process the fact that the people they admire, they worship, and also the people they subjugate are the exact same people, right? But that's something they got to deal with. We don't need to worry about that, because in the age of information, we have the power to understand it ourselves, and to understand how rich of a culture Egypt had. You got to also understand that Egyptian culture was also consistent with all other African cultures, including West African cultures. Knowing that you're West African doesn't disconnect you from North Africa. It connects you to North Africa. It connects you to those great empires, even the ones you don't know about, that's sitting around the Great Lakes region, that's in that desert. You think that desert was a desert the whole time? No. Even your idea what North Africa looks like is skewed based off the propaganda people gave you. It was green and lush. We like to live in green, lush places. And when places are not green and lush, guess what we do? We move to green and lush places, like we did when we left Egypt, when we left Libya, when those Arab and European invaders came down to take that spot after it was, no longer viable for any type of tropical living. They just took it. Okay, you have it. We moved back home, like our ancestors said they moved home. So if you're a West African, understand your culture is so rich and deep. Your culture is filled with so much real, authentic, raw, organic spirituality, more understanding of concepts of nature, because that's who these deities are. You see, religion turns deities into actual mythological creatures, right? And you believe that you had all these characters doing all these things, and you believe it. But spirituality, all the deities that we have, even from our orishas, right, to our demigods, those are all just concepts, right? They were just concepts. And a lot of them were actual real people who got basically deified into a concept because of something extraordinary that they did. Europeans also copy this form of deifying the ancestors, the saints, the apostles. They actually do the same thing we do. They just give it a new name, right? They demonize the original, the place they got it from. They demonize it while copying it and giving it a new name. That's why I say stop calling yourself a Jew. You're not a Jew. Jew is not an African word. Hebrew is not an African word. Jew is not an African concept. Hebrew is not an African concept. None of that is African. That's all made up. And we continue because we have a few links in our head, because we just can't get rid of it. We can't get rid of it. Some of us are still stuck, even though we fight for liberation against the barbarian, but we use the same tools they use to subjugate us. That is a problem. Right? You can never use the enemy's tools to liberate yourself. You need to use your own tools, because our tools are more powerful. That's why the European likes to use our tools for themselves. While we make the tool, but they use and benefit from the tool. Right? So even though we're commemorating our freedom, we still have a ways to go. As heroic as those tribes in the Bible inspires you to liberate yourselves, as heroic as it seems, as daunting of a story that the lost tribes, it sounds great because it sounds very familiar from what it is that we Africans have experienced. So of course you can correlate, right? As human beings, we are very good at recognizing patterns. That's how we survive. Patterns is how we recognize things, right? For instance, PTSD, a term that you hear, that is something that is given to us in nature so that we don't make the same mistakes twice, right? If a stick hits me in the face because I'm not paying attention and it hurts, I'm gonna have post-traumatic getting hit in the face with a stick syndrome, and next time I see a stick, I'm gonna be more cautious. I'm gonna be more worried. I'm automatically react as to not allow myself to be hurt by the stick, right? That's a small example, but that's part of natures, adapting to one's situation, making sure you survive, right? So we have all these terms that we use nowadays, but a lot of this stuff is just rooted in our nature, right? And African people, we naturally are the spirits and the guides of this planet. We're the most, think about it, we're the most welcoming people on the planet. Why? We're most Christ-like, aren't we? What would Jesus do? The same things most Africans would do. It's the truth. And you see these other groups, they don't display any level of peace that they profess, that they practice. African people, we practice, even when we do and get involved with these religions, what we don't need, because we are literally the character everybody's trying to be, we still practice it in a better way. Why? Because no matter how much we want to, don't want to, how conscious and unconscious it is, we can never stop being the gods that we are. We can never stop being the spirits that we are. So that's why when you go to our churches, there's some energy there. That's not white Christian energy, that's African energy. That's why you go to the mosque, right? There's more energy there than when it's just a bunch of Arabs and white people. Why? Because that's that African energy, right? In America, the actual America is African American. Take African Americans, take the African out of America, and what do you have? Take everything the African American has contributed to America, then what do you have? Take the African out of every war that we participated in with that barbarian against other barbarians, and what kind of planet do you have? African people have been integral in every war, turning the tides of war in every battle that America has participated in, even the one that liberated us. If it wasn't for us liberating ourselves, we would not be liberated. We have so much more power than we know. We have so much more power, but we must be responsible with it even when we get it. We don't need to be like them, because they're not like us. So we don't need to seek revenge, even though they think we're gonna do it. And if let's say we decided to do it, who could stop us? Let's be honest. Let's say one day all black folks woke up and say, you know what? I choose violence. I want problems, always. What could anybody actually do? I want you to sit back and think about it. What could they really do if all of us just said, you know what? We're going to do what the barbarian does. What could they do? We know they can't do anything. We're like the gentle giant, right? But when you piss that giant off, that's it, right? Now today you're going to have some black people who hate themselves, and because they're suffering from PTSD, they're suffering from the trauma passed down to them by their parents and by their situation that African people were placed in, economically in this country. They're going to tell you that this day is not important. They're going to tell you that it's pandering, right? They're going to tell you you need to forget about the past and let it go. And then in a few weeks, they're going to go celebrate the 4th of July. They're going to go celebrate the ancestors of the white barbarian who wanted to fight against the crown to keep all the money, the slave money for themselves. They're going to celebrate the day at which European barbarians came here and successfully eliminated a whole group of people, relegating them to horrible, unproductive land in the middle of nowhere, and detaching themselves from their parent group, the European, the UK, the British Crown. That's what they're going to celebrate, so they can be free to be slave owners and keep all the money. That's what they're going to celebrate. They're going to talk about the war and their ancestors' contributions to the war. They're going to reenact the war. They're going to fire off fireworks, which is a display of war. It simulates, war a little bit, but it's colorful and pretty. They're going to honor their ancestors. They're going to pander to the Europeans on both sides. That's what they're going to do. Even the European in Europe is going to celebrate the day that their baby barbarian beat them in a battle. They're probably proud about it. And they're going to fire off fireworks too. Have you ever listened to the British national anthem? I know you haven't. Have you ever listened to the British? Here's some homework. I want you to type British national anthem and listen to it. And watch what you hear. I'm not even going to say anything. Listen to the British national anthem and tell me how familiar it sounds. And it'll let you know where we are. We are the United Kingdom 2.0. And don't ever let you think otherwise. But times is changing. Times is changing, and soon enough we'll be taking over this world. And you know what? As the other groups realize that they have to pander to us, because our power is growing, because our awareness is growing, because our capability is growing, they have no choice but to pander to us. That's what pandering is. You only pander when you're forced to pander. You're only allowed to be free when you force them to do it. Africans have been forcing our relevance back on this planet. We've been forcing it because that's who we are. We may be nice, but we're going to get it done at some point, right? So I want you to just disregard all the haters who's going to use this day and to tell you, I don't want you to think about this day, because they want to make sure that their friends don't feel uncomfortable on this day. Because white people are going through something right now. They're losing power because their forefathers set them up for failure. They miseducated them the same way they miseducated us. They told those white people that we didn't do shit. Think about this. You see, us black people, we know, a lot of us didn't know that we contributed so much to society, right? And that was used to make us feel less than, so that we would accept their superiority, so that we accept their rules, their regulations, their ways of being. That was the purpose. Because if we knew how great we were, our pride in of itself, even our lowest vibration of ego, would not allow ourselves to be subjugated to such things. And even at that case, we still didn't allow it for the most part. That's why we're free now. Because had we not fought, guess what? We would still be slaves now. We would. We would be slaves now. But we freed ourselves, right? So I just want you guys to realize how powerful you actually are. But you won't be at your maximum power capability until you dispel all the foreign infections that infects us and embrace who you are. Embracing your blackness, embracing your Africanness, and continuing to free your mind even though you're physically free, that will only make you stronger. And if it makes you stronger, it makes me stronger. And if it makes us stronger, it makes us all stronger. And that's black power, right? And forgive those Kunarians who are still suffering from self-hate, and they project their self-hate onto the world. That's why all they see is drug dealers. All they see is the problems of the black community. All they look for and are attracted to is black degeneracy, because that's where their mind is. Your mind only pays attention to what it wants to pay attention to. Your mind sees what it wants to see. Your mind's a tricky thing, right? So if you got somebody that's constantly talking negative about black people, is because they constantly think negative about themselves. We should feel sorry for these people. Now, we can't let them get in our way, but we should feel sorry for these people and know that they're always going to be there. We're always going to have black people who rather capitulate to whiteness or Asianness because it's easier as far as they're concerned. They're damaged goods. But here's the good news. There are billions of Africans on this planet. As soon as you accept that you're an African, you become the majority. The most powerful, most resource-rich majority with the most potential on this planet when you accept you're an African. Period. African. And we must free ourselves. We have a long way to go, but we're doing a good job. And you know what? Our story is way more fantastical than that fake story that for some reason a few of us like to hold on to. Compare the story of the Jews to the story of the African. It's no competition. Not only does it is a parable, but ours is even worse. And ours has been proven. We know ours happened. We have archaeological evidence of ours happened. We have eyewitnesses of ours happening. We have historical records of ours happening. Physical evidence of ours happening. We have every category that there is to create and formulate evidence and a consensus to a thing being true. We have that on our side in abundance. That what we went through was real. The Bible and all religions are mythologies. They're not real. They're all mythologies. They're not real. And in the age of information, we're going to have to evolve and tell ourselves it's okay to let go of these mythologies. It's okay. I know it's hard. It's hard. There's people who watch me that just don't like me talking about this because they got to hold on to that Jesus. I know we like to say Jesus is black. It makes us feel a little better, right? It softens the blow, but guess what? There was no Jesus. Now, am I saying there wasn't revolutionaries who tried to free themselves from the influence of the Roman Empire and didn't get tortured in that manner? Yeah, of course. I guarantee you there are people back then who inspired the character of Jesus. There were a lot of revolutionaries who inspired the character of Jesus, who in real life got crucified because they dared to speak truth to power. I guarantee you. And we can also think about some people in our recent history, just in America, who also fought for their people and got crucified by the same barbarian in the same manner. And they had the same convictions. So within our own culture, we have people who stand up to this character we like to deify. Already within our own group of people in recent history, we have Africans right now in America and on the continent who also went through and should be deified in the same level which we deify this mythological white person. Because they actually did it, and we know who they are, for real. We know where some of them are born, where they've been buried. We can go to their graves and honor them. So, all I'm saying is, we got a lot of ways to go. We have way more potential than a lot of us realize. But I have a lot of hope for the future. Hey, let me tell you a secret. Y'all do know we about to take over the entire planet, right? Have you noticed? Like, listen. I know we got problems, right? I know y'all be thinking about gentrification and all that shit, but guess what? Gentrification don't mean shit anymore. There's not enough of them. You understand? Listen, Asians and Europeans are literally going extinct. Through no fault of us. This is them. This is the way their capitalist system has pressured the societies into not creating environments conducive to making babies, to making large families. See, while Africans are still making large families in the communal, Asians and Europeans are fighting the rat race of the capitalistic system, and they don't want to have no babies because they can't afford it. That's why Europe is trying to pay their women to have babies. That's why European Americans don't want women to get abortions, because they need their white women to have babies. Asian people are trying to get black people to move. Soon enough, we're going to repopulate all the places we populated the first time around. It wouldn't give them back the melanin that they had before. Because clearly when they lost that melanin, they lost their fucking minds. Right? We're about to give them their minds back. So all the technology is coming, all this space exploration, all biotechnology, all the robotics, AI, guess what? All that's being curated for us to take over. That's the secret. And those who know. All we have to do is keep doing what we're doing, keep elevating ourselves, because guess what? One day the key is going to be sitting by the door, and all we got to do is grab it. Because there ain't going to be nobody else there to take it. So we got to make sure our youth is smart enough to take over these industries. We got to be encouraging our children to be biotech engineers, aeronautic engineers, pilots. We got to get them interested in space. We got to get them interested in all the technical STEM fields so that they can go ahead and take the keys from these guys, when they conk out. In the healthcare field, we already took that over. So it's only a matter of time. Listen, we baby-age kids. We don't die, we multiply. That's the truth. All right, so everybody keep your head up. This is a great day. Do what you want to do. Barbecue. Go out to eat. Go see a movie. Sit in the house, don't do nothing, and play video games all day. Go smoke some weed. Go have yourself a drink. Go chew on some mushrooms and go talk to aliens if you want. Do whatever you want to do. Just be safe about it. And enjoy the day. And honor your ancestors. Right? The most important thing is honor your ancestors, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be here. That's why I don't allow people to disrespect our ancestors. I revere our ancestors. I don't revere a mythological ancestor called Jesus. I don't revere a mythological, but maybe God existed, called Muhammad, or whatever the dude name is. I don't revere them. I have ancestors that I can revere, that I know existed, and I know sacrificed themselves for us. Those are the ones I revere. And I'll never disrespect them by calling myself a Native American. I, like you, I got grandparents and aunts who were half Indian. I heard all my grandma was an Indian too. I know the story. But once I got more information, I understood. Even if she is Indian, it don't make me not African, because that amount of Indian is inconsequential. I'm an African. All right, and I honor all my African ancestors. All right, you should too. Anyway, that's all I got to say. I hope you enjoy your Juneteenth. It's Afro Think Tank. Some tea time.